The first signs of trouble came quietly, almost imperceptibly. Dr. June Park sat in his dimly lit laboratory, surrounded by screens displaying complex genetic sequences. Outside the window, Seoul hummed with its usual evening energy, unaware of the microscopic threat that was about to change everything. It started with a strange transmission, not a loud, dramatic alien broadcast, but a subtle data pulse that slipped through global communication networks like a ghost. Most computer systems barely registered its existence, but June knew something was different. The genetic markers he'd been studying for years suddenly showed an impossible pattern. Hyun Kim, his research partner, walked in with 2 cups of coffee. Her usually calm face looked troubled. "The satellite data doesn't make sense," she muttered, placing a digital report on the holographic display. Tiny red dots began spreading across a world map, each representing a unique genetic anomaly. The bioweapon wasn't like anything humans had encountered before. It wasn't a virus, it wasn't a bacteria. It was something more sophisticated, a living, thinking genetic algorithm designed to completely dismantle any species' biological defense mechanisms. Each moment it existed, it learned. Each moment, it adapted. In research facilities across the world, scientists began noticing similar patterns. Genetic sequences that shouldn't exist were appearing in human DNA samples. Small mutations, tiny changes that seemed random but were perfectly calculated. The first human casualties appeared in remote regions, a small village in Mongolia, a research station in Antarctica, a farming community in Brazil. People would simply stop functioning. Their bodies would shut down systematically, without pain, without struggle. No traditional medical tests could explain why. Global health organizations were initially confused. The World Health Organization called it an unknown pandemic. Governments started implementing quarantine protocols. But this was no ordinary disease. This was a precision instrument of extinction. June understood something fundamental about this weapon that others didn't. It wasn't just targeting humans, it was studying them, learning from their genetic structure, preparing to completely erase their biological possibility of existence. Military intelligence agencies began receiving strange reports. Satellite imagery showed massive alien constructs in deep space, positioned strategically around Earth's orbital region. These weren't invasion ships. They were observation platforms watching how their ultimate bioweapon performed. The weapon worked by understanding genetic diversity and then systematically creating a solution to neutralize every possible variation. It would analyze human genetic structures, create a targeted approach, and then eliminate entire population groups with surgical precision. What the alien creators didn't know was how unpredictable human genetics could be. Every population group, every isolated community carried unique genetic markers. The mutations that had developed through centuries of migration, adaptation, and survival were about to become humanity's greatest defense. In research labs, hospitals, and underground facilities, scientists like June and Hyun were racing against time. They weren't just studying the bioweapon. They were trying to understand its fundamental logic. How could something so precisely designed have a weakness? The global population remained largely unaware. Some conspiracy theorists online talked about strange health incidents. Social media buzzed with unexplained medical reports. But the real battle was happening in laboratories, in genetic research centers, in the quiet spaces where humanity's survival would be determined. June looked at Hyun. "We have less time than we thought," he said quietly. The genetic sequences on the screen continued to change, mutate, evolve. Each second counted. Each moment brought humanity closer to either total extinction or an unprecedented survival. The bioweapon was patient. It had eliminated countless civilizations across galaxies. It had a perfect track record. Humanity was just another target, just another species to be systematically removed from existence. But something was different this time. Something in human genetic structure was resisting in ways the weapon's creators could never have predicted. The silent invasion had begun, and humanity's most important battle was about to unfold. The first major city to fall was Seoul. It happened on a Tuesday morning when the streets were busy with morning traffic and people rushing to work. One moment, everything seemed normal. The next, people began collapsing. Dr. Yoon Choi was in her hospital when the first patients arrived. They didn't look sick. They simply stopped moving. Their bodies remained functional, but something fundamental had switched off. No heartbeat, no brain activity, just empty shells of human beings. Within hours, communication networks started breaking down. Hospitals became overwhelmed. Medical professionals watched in horror as patients died without any visible cause. No fever, no pain, no struggle. Just sudden, complete shutdown. Governments tried to contain the information. But in the age of instant communication, secrets spread faster than any disease. Social media exploded with images of people falling in streets, in offices, in subway stations. The world watched in real time as something inexplicable happened. Jun Park and his team were tracking the genetic mutations. They discovered a terrifying pattern. The bioweapon wasn't just killing people, it was selecting them. Certain genetic groups disappeared first. Others seemed mysteriously resistant. New York was next, then Tokyo. London followed. Major population centers became silent zones. Entire cities turned into massive graveyards within hours. Emergency services collapsed. Communication networks went dark. Governments lost control. Military teams tried to establish quarantine zones. But the bioweapon was always one step ahead. It adapted faster than any human system could respond. Traditional medical treatments became useless. Vaccines disintegrated. Antibodies failed. Hyun Kim discovered something strange during her research. Some isolated communities showed unexpected resistance. A small village in the Andes, a remote island population in the Pacific. Genetic groups that seemed to have a natural defense against the weapon. Global population tracking showed a shocking reality. Within a week, nearly 60% of the world's population had been eliminated. No discrimination, no preference. The bioweapon moved with mathematical precision. Panic spread faster than the weapon itself. People tried to escape cities, but there was nowhere to go. The bioweapon had already calculated every possible human movement pattern, every potential survival strategy. Research facilities around the world became humanity's last hope. Scientists worked without sleep. They analyzed genetic sequences. They tried to understand the weapon's core logic, but each time they thought they found a pattern, the weapon changed. Yoon noticed something crucial during her research. The weapon wasn't just destroying human bodies. It was collecting information. Each death provided more data. Each genetic sequence analyzed made its next attack more precise. Military leaders discussed desperate strategies, nuclear options, complete global isolation, but nothing seemed effective against an enemy that could adapt faster than human thought. The alien creators watched from their distant observation platforms. This was routine for them. Countless civilizations had fallen to their ultimate weapon. Humanity was just another target in their galactic elimination program. But they didn't know about human diversity. They didn't understand that every genetic variation was a potential survival strategy. What seemed like weakness was actually humanity's greatest strength. Jun and his team worked in a hidden underground facility. They knew they were racing against time. Each moment counted. Each genetic sequence analyzed could be the key to survival. The world had reached its breaking point. Civilization as humans knew it was collapsing. Cities became silent. Governments disappeared. The only hope remained in small research facilities where scientists worked with desperate determination. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to prove that diversity could be a weapon more powerful than any biological algorithm. The breaking point had arrived, and nobody knew what would happen next. Woo Jin stared at the genetic sequence, his eyes burning from hours of continuous research. Something was happening that no one had predicted. The bioweapon was complex, but human genetics were proving to be even more complicated. In the underground research facility, Scientists from different backgrounds worked together. They weren't just researchers anymore. They were humanity's last line of defense. Each genetic variation became a potential weapon against the alien bioweapon. The discovery came unexpectedly. A blood sample from a fisherman in a small coastal village showed an unusual mutation. The bioweapon tried to attack, but the genetic structure simply shifted. It was like watching water flow around a rock. The weapon couldn't find a permanent way to destroy the cells. Hyun Kim developed a breakthrough tracking system. They could now watch how the bioweapon attempted to break down human genetic structures in real time. What they saw was both terrifying and fascinating. The weapon would attack. The human genetics would adapt, sometimes within seconds. Global communication was limited, but research facilities shared information through encrypted channels. Scientists realized that human genetic diversity was creating a natural defense mechanism. Each population group, from mountain tribes to isolated island communities, carried unique genetic markers that confused the bioweapon's targeting system. Wu Jin created a computer model that mapped genetic resistance. He discovered something extraordinary. The more diverse the genetic background, the more resistant the individual became. Mixed-race populations showed the highest survival rates. What the alien weapon saw as complexity, humans saw as strength. The research team worked in shifts. Nobody slept more than 2 hours at a time. They knew the stakes were too high. Each moment of research could mean the difference between human extinction and survival. Military teams around the world began collecting genetic samples, not for weapons, but for understanding. They realized that survival wasn't about fighting. It was about adapting. The human body was becoming a living, breathing defense mechanism. Strange reports came from isolated regions. Communities with minimal outside contact showed remarkable resistance. A small mountain village in Tibet, an indigenous tribe in the Amazon. Remote populations that had maintained genetic isolation were proving to be unexpected survivors. The bioweapon continued its attack, but something fundamental had changed. Instead of wiping out populations, it was now struggling. Each genetic attack was met with an unexpected response. Humans weren't just surviving, they were learning. Yoon Choi discovered that the weapon had a critical weakness. It operated on predictable, mathematical models. But human genetics didn't follow strict rules. They were chaotic, unpredictable. Each genetic mutation was a surprise even to the weapon itself. International research teams began sharing a radical theory. Human genetic diversity wasn't a weakness. It was the most sophisticated defense mechanism in the known universe. The very thing that made humans different was now keeping them alive. Satellite observations showed the alien observation platforms becoming confused. Their weapon, which had eliminated countless civilizations, was failing against humanity. The mathematical precision of their bioweapon couldn't handle the beautiful chaos of human genetics. Wu Jin's team developed the first defensive genetic protocol. It wasn't a cure. It was an adaptation strategy. They could now help human bodies recognize and quickly modify against the bioweapon's attack patterns. The genetic rebellion had begun. Humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were proving that diversity was the most powerful weapon in the universe. Each genetic variation was a potential solution. Each mixed heritage a potential defense. The alien weapon had made one critical mistake. It had underestimated the power of human genetic complexity. What seemed like randomness was actually the most sophisticated defense mechanism imaginable. As research facilities around the world continued their work, a new hope emerged. Humanity wasn't going to be another statistic in the alien elimination program. They were going to fight back. One genetic sequence at a time. The rebellion had just begun. Sang Yoon stood in the military command center, watching the global tactical display. The world looked different now. Not broken, but transformed. Humanity's survival strategy had become something no one could have predicted. The counteroffensive wasn't about traditional warfare. It was a genetic battle fought at the microscopic level. Military teams worked alongside genetic researchers, creating a global defense protocol that merged scientific understanding with strategic planning. Every surviving population became a potential resource. Blood samples, genetic records, DNA sequences, everything was collected and analyzed. The military had transformed from a fighting force to a preservation network. Their mission: protect human genetic diversity at all costs. Research facilities around the world began developing a radical genetic modification program. They weren't trying to defeat the bioweapon directly. They were teaching human bodies how to recognize and adapt faster than the weapon could attack. Satellite communications showed the alien observation platforms becoming increasingly confused. Their weapon, designed with mathematical precision, was failing against human genetic chaos. Each attack was met with an unexpected response. Wu Jin's team created the first genetic firewall. It wasn't a traditional defense system. It was a living, breathing adaptation protocol that could modify human genetic structures in real time. The body would now learn faster than the weapon could attack. Military strategists realized that traditional combat methods were useless. This was a war fought inside human cells. Every person became a potential defender. Every genetic variation a potential weapon. Isolated communities became critical research zones. Mountain tribes, remote island populations, indigenous groups with minimal outside contact. These populations carried genetic variations that the bioweapon couldn't easily understand. The global genetic modification program worked differently in each region. In South America, teams focused on indigenous genetic markers. In Asia, they studied population groups with unique genetic backgrounds. In Africa, they analyzed centuries of genetic diversity. Sang Yoon coordinated the global response. Military resources were redirected. Food production, medical facilities, research centers, everything became part of the genetic preservation strategy. Survival was no longer about fighting. It was about adaptation. Hyun Kim developed a breakthrough tracking system. They could now predict how the bioweapon would attempt to attack human genetic structures. More importantly, they could teach human bodies how to respond before the attack happened. The kill rate began to drop dramatically, from 99% to 70%, then 50%, then 30%. Each percentage point represented millions of human lives saved. The weapon that was supposed to eliminate humanity was now struggling to maintain its attack patterns. Communication networks started recovering, not through traditional methods, but through carefully protected genetic communication channels. Survivors shared genetic adaptation strategies. Each successful defense became a blueprint for others. Alien observation platforms watched in confusion. Their weapon, which had eliminated countless civilizations, was being outsmarted by a species they had considered primitive. Humanity wasn't just surviving. They were learning at an unprecedented rate. The counteroffensive had multiple layers: genetic modification, strategic population protection, rapid information sharing. Every surviving human became part of the defense mechanism. Yoon Choi's research team discovered something extraordinary. The bioweapon was actually helping humans evolve. Each attack was making human genetic structures more complex, more adaptive. What was meant to destroy was actually making humanity stronger. Military teams began establishing protected genetic diversity zones, areas where different population groups could safely interact, share genetic information, and continue the adaptation process. These weren't just survival camps, they were living genetic laboratories. The weapon continued its attacks, but with decreasing effectiveness. Human bodies were learning faster than the weapon could adapt. Each attack was met with an increasingly sophisticated response. Sang Yoon looked at the global display. The world looked different, damaged, but not defeated. Humanity had transformed from a collection of separate populations into a single, adaptive organism. The counteroffensive wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving that diversity was the most powerful weapon in the universe. The alien observation platform hung silently in deep space, its sophisticated sensors struggling to comprehend what had happened. Humanity had done the impossible, not just survived, but transformed the ultimate weapon into their own evolutionary tool. June Park stood at the Global Communication Center, watching as the first message was prepared to be sent beyond Earth's atmosphere. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was a statement of survival. Humanity had changed the rules of galactic existence. The genetic modification program had done more than just protect human populations. It had created a new form of biological intelligence. Human bodies were now living computers, capable of adapting faster than any known technological system in the universe. Alien Command received the transmission with growing confusion. The bioweapons data stream showed something unprecedented. Humanity hadn't just survived. They had completely rewritten the weapon's core programming. Satellite networks began reconstructing global communication systems. Cities that had been silent started to rebuild. But these weren't the same cities that existed before. Everything had changed. Humanity had become something new. Wu Jin's research revealed the most shocking discovery. The bioweapon's genetic algorithm had been completely absorbed and repurposed by human genetic structures. What was meant to destroy had become a tool for human evolution. Global population centers looked different. People carried genetic modifications that allowed them to communicate, adapt, and survive in ways never before possible. The weapon had inadvertently created a new stage of human development. Hyun Kim analyzed the final data streams. The alien civilization that created the bioweapon was now facing an unexpected problem. Humanity wasn't just a surviving species. They had become a new type of intelligent life form. Military strategists realized that the battle was no longer about defense. It was about understanding the new capabilities humanity had acquired. Every person was now part of a global adaptive network. Sang Yoon coordinated the first extraterrestrial response. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. Humanity had learned something fundamental about survival that no other species had understood. The alien observation platforms began receiving complex genetic signals. Humanity was communicating, not through traditional language, but through advanced genetic communication protocols that the aliens couldn't understand. Research facilities around the world celebrated a victory that went beyond traditional understanding. They hadn't just saved humanity. They had evolved humanity into something entirely new. Yoon Choi's final report was simple but profound. The bioweapon had been a gift, a challenge that forced human genetics to develop capabilities beyond imagination. Survival wasn't just about resisting destruction, it was about transformation. Global genetic diversity became humanity's greatest weapon. Every population group, every genetic variation contributed to a collective intelligence that was impossible to predict or control. The alien civilization watched in horror as their ultimate weapon became humanity's greatest achievement. Mathematical precision had been defeated by genetic chaos. Controlled elimination had been transformed into uncontrolled evolution. Communication attempts from the alien platforms became increasingly desperate. They tried to understand how a species they considered primitive had completely outsmarted their most advanced biological weapon. June Park looked up at the stars and smiled. Humanity had not just survived. They had shown the universe that diversity was the most powerful force of adaptation. The first extraterrestrial message was simple. We are still here, and we are something new. Global populations began to understand their new capabilities. Genetic communication, rapid adaptation, a collective intelligence that moved faster than any technological system. The galactic reckoning wasn't about destruction, it was about transformation. Humanity had rewritten the rules of biological existence. The weapon that was meant to eliminate them had become the very thing that would take them to the stars. Humanity hadn't just survived, they had evolved.